Hey guys, my name is Phinn Lynch. I'm on the PPG A team for Pokemon, and I got 12th out of about 1,100 this weekend. This past weekend at Dallas Regionals playing Night March, so I'm just going to be doing a deck profile and talking to you guys about how the list worked out for me and what I would change and things like that. Alright, so to start off we have the Pokemon line. Of course you're going to play a 4-4-4 Night March line. That's like a no-brainer. Can't really play any less than that because then you can't Night March for enough damage and you'll prize Night Marchers to the time, etc. Of course you want the 4-4-4. And then 2-2 Zoroark GX, which is a little bit strange actually. Most people were playing 3-3, or maybe 3-2, some people were even playing 4-3, but I decided to just go with the 2-2 because I really never needed much more than that, and there just wasn't room to fit them, in my opinion, because the only way to really do that is by cutting Trainer's Mail, and Trainer's Mail I think is too good to get rid of. I think running 2 Trainer's Mail is much better than running a 1-1 thicker Zoroark line. So I decided to just keep it at that, keep it more similar to the way it was built before San Jose, and give myself a better Night March mirror because of the males, and then, in my opinion, you actually have a better Zoroark matchup when you keep the males as well. But, yeah, that's why I decided to stay at that. And then I played the Lynch Zora just to give myself a better mirror match. I thought I was going to see a lot of mirrors in day 2, and I thought I was going to see a lot of good players overall playing Night March, but I actually didn't see, like, a whole lot of them piloting Night March, and the ones that were actually didn't make day 2 very much, so I was one of the only Night March players to actually make day 2. I think there was, like, 3 or 4 total. But, yeah, I didn't play a whole lot of mirrors, and then all my other techs in the deck just, like, made it so I was beating the mirror anyway, so I never had to lunge. And I actually didn't end up using Lunge either of the days at all. So, I don't know. I think if I could do it again, I might run like 1 Paralyzing Gaze and 1 Lunge, but nonetheless, I think the attack on Zora comes up like almost never either way, so it's a pretty like unimportant thing. 3 Shaman as opposed to 2 I think is really good because obviously I don't have 3-3 Zoroark, so I need a little bit more extra draw support. I have more bench space for Shaman because I don't have the 3-3 Zoroark as well. It's just really consistent. There were tons of games where I used all 3 Shaman, several games where I prized 1 Shaman then used the other 2 and I was fine because like I have the higher count, so if I had prized 1 I might have been in trouble because I only have access to 1 until I drew it off the prizes. So yeah, I think 3 was definitely optimal. It helped a lot with avoiding like turn 1 gets us problems. There was like 2 times specifically where I had the Shaman in my hand after my opponent gets this to me, and I was fine as a result of it. So I think Shaman's really nice because it like eliminates one of the most popular issues with this deck, which is turn 1 gets this, and it just keeps the deck smooth, makes your late games really good, and it keeps the deck very consistent. 1 Marshadow and 1 Lele and 1 Tauros, just because, well, I guess they all have different reasons. Lele is kind of obvious, like every deck plays Lele. This deck has like what, 7 one-of supporters, so you want a way to search those out, of course, other than using like Compressor and Verseeker. So it just helps for that. Sometimes you don't want to like draw cards, you just want to actually search out the supporter you need and play that. So it's nice to have a 1 Lele instead of the 4th Shaman. And nobody's really playing 4 Shaman anymore anyway, but 1 Marshadow is just because you can hit for weakness against Zoroark GX, lets you hit higher numbers against Gardevoir so that you can like actually hit that 230 number that's like really important. And then just to, like against whales it's really good too because you can discard all of your Night Marchers and then copy Joltik's Night March to like hit for a lot of damage. It's really nice, especially if you prize 2 or maybe even 3 Night Marchers against whales. I don't know, Marshadow's just good. I don't think it's ever going to leave the deck. It might even go up to 2 at some point. It's also really good for dealing with Oricorio. It has some downsides, like if you Hex you can't use Shadow Hunt, so that's kind of annoying, but overall Marshadow is a very solid 1-of, and I think I'm pretty much always going to keep it in the deck, maybe even go up to 2 depending on the meta. And then Tauros was really interesting because it was super good against Seismitoad decks. I played against a Seismitoad Zoroark deck in day 1, and I lost game 1 because he just gets this to me, and then game 2 I was like, alright, I'm not getting gets this turn 1. I Ultra Balled for Tauros like right off the bat, and then did a bunch of stuff, played a bunch of cards, and basically what happened is like he just couldn't deal with the Tauros because if he attacks into it he just gets Mad Bulled, and then even after he attacks into it I can still attack with the Tauros again and like use Rage. You can Horn attack to knock out Zoras in the beginning. It's really strong against Toad in general and item lock decks most of the time. But any deck that like has trouble doing 180 Tauros can be helpful against. I didn't use it a whole lot other than that. I used it when I played against Magnezone Zoroark during day 1, but I don't think I actually attacked with Tauros at all during day 2. Oh, I might have used Torn Attack one time when I played against a Lycanroc Zoroark deck. I'm not sure, but I didn't win that game anyway. So yeah, I don't know. I think Tauros is really good for what it is for, but it's like you don't want to use it really much for anything else other than dealing with item lock. And then for supporters, I only play 2 Juniper because I wanted to fit 1 Chorus. Because Chorus is really nice. It gives you shuffle draw that doesn't disrupt your opponent's hand, and it can draw you a ton of cards. And since Zoroark is really popular, your opponent fills up their bench like really quickly, and then they go up to like 8 a lot of the time because of Skyfield. So you can draw tons of cards with Chorus. It's like your optimal draw supporter past your second or third turn when you're playing against Zoroark decks. And your optimal draw supporter a lot of the time, just in general, even when you're not against Zoroark decks. So I found it to be very helpful. There was one time where my opponent gets this to me, and the only draw supporter I had in my hand was Chorus, and I was like, oh no, this is the reason why people tell me to play 3 Juniper, is because, you know, you get Guess This and then you have to Chorus and it stinks. But the thing was, I just like drew for turn, benched 2 Pokemon, and then I chorused for 4, and I was fine. And I just drew an Ultra Ball off that chorus for 4, and then set up, and like I took a knockout turn 1 anyway. So I think the Gets This argument's really not very good. I think chorus is like super helpful, and I found it very useful the entire tournament. I used it tons and tons of times. Pokemon Ranger I never played once. The only reason I had it in there was because of like Giratina and Seismitoad and stuff like that are locking you. But I didn't use it a single time, and I really wish I didn't play it. So I would definitely cut that in hindsight. Hex Maniac is excellent against Zoroark decks. It's like the disruption support you want to go for. I try to Hex Maniac turn 1 every game I can when I go first against Zoroark decks, and just like pretty much hex as often as I can in that matchup. Super, super powerful. I use it in a bunch of different matchups, but like anything that relies heavily on abilities gets hurt really hard by Hex. And this deck can pull off a lot of Hexes in a row because you have so much extra draw support with the Shamans, the Males, and the Zoroark. So I found Hex to be definitely a staple in the deck. Guzma, I don't play Lysander, I just play the 1 Guzma, and that's because I have Counter Catcher in the list, and I'll explain that later. But yeah, Guzma's obviously like, you know, you need to play that. It's Gust of Wind effect. Obviously, like every deck has at least one of those. But yeah, I chose that one over Lysander because it's nice to have a way to switch. And like, even though it forces you to switch sometimes when you don't want to, it's almost always fine. You can just almost always bring up something and just retreat with a Float Stone, or just like attack with something else. I just wanted to have the option to switch so I wouldn't get locked into having something in the active position when I didn't want them to. So yeah, I went with Guzma over Lysander for my 1 of Gust effect, in terms of supporters, I mean. And then Teammates is like insanely good. I want to play 2 sometimes. The card just like gets you exactly what you need on your second turn a lot of the time, maybe your third turn. It really just keeps the deck super consistent. You can get the 1 puzzle when you need it. You can get your DCE so that you can like get the guaranteed attack, and you don't have to take any risks with Juniper or Chorus or N or whatever. You just have the guarantee that it's like you're going to grab it. I used it all the time. Super, super strong consistency card. Gets This is weird because it's really nice for turn 1 in Night March Mirror, and it's nice, I guess, in some other matchups, mostly just for Night March Mirror though, I found. But like a lot of the time I would rather just Hex instead of Gets This, so I found Gets This to be like, I don't know, it's kind of like mediocre, but I really liked it for Mirror, and there were some scenarios where it helped a lot. Like when I played against Zoroark Seismitoad, it was really nice because I got rid of his Verse Seeker in his hand, like when I played it actually twice that round. And I played against a Groudon deck, and he careened for puzzle, and he didn't play the puzzle, so I immediately just Gets This him, and then one-shot his active, and then he just like lost the game from there because of it. So I think Gets This is really nice for like scenarios like that. There's definitely a right time and a wrong time to play Gets This. Very risky card by nature, but very powerful as well. And I think I would keep it in the list even though it wasn't like, it was probably the worst supporter in the deck, but I still think it was, oh no, I'm sorry, Ranger was the worst supporter in the deck, but I still would keep Gets This on the list. I think it's pretty good, but I would consider cutting it. And then obviously you gotta play 1 N, just need that for the late game disruption really. Like sometimes you just need to shuffle your opponent's hand back into their deck and make them draw a low amount, especially when they're playing Zoroark and like drawing tons and tons of cards. So it's just like a disruption supporter really, and also to shuffle your hand back into your deck and draw new cards so that you don't have to like Juniper away puzzles or Verse Seekers and stuff like that. Sort of the same idea as Chorus, but if you don't have a big bench, then you'd rather N instead sometimes. So that's the Pokemon. And then I only played 1 Stadium. I just played 1 D-Valley, and I kind of wish I played 2. I cut the second one for Tauros last minute. But 1 was like fine. You can definitely get away with 1. It's just really annoying when you start with Pumpkaboo because you really need to get that D-Valley by your second turn usually. So it's a little bit hard to access it when you only play 1. But teammates can help it search it out, and overall I think 1 was fine. I might like just go with 1 again if I could do it over. And then I play 4 versus Seekers because, like, of course, everybody runs 4 versus Seekers and Expanded pretty much. You want to be able to chain hex, want to have access to the Guzma whenever you can. You know, I don't run a whole lot of, like, draw supporters in this deck. There's only, like, let's see, 4 if you don't count Getsus and you don't count teammates, which I probably wouldn't count those as draw cards, draw supporters. So it's really important to have, like, a very high count of Seeker just so you have a lot of consistency and make sure you don't run out of steam late game. For Ultra Ball, this is pretty obvious. Like, discards your Night Marchers for you, searches out the Pokemon you need, makes you set up for more cards because you're discarding more cards from your hand. Super, super powerful. Definitely would never consider going down to anything less than 4. 4 Battle Compressor, also extremely powerful in this deck. This is the way to get all the Lampins discarded, get a lot of 1-of supporters discarded, drop anything else you don't need in the late game, gets your damage output very high very quickly because Night March does more damage for each Night March you have discarded. Would not consider going down to anything less than 4 of those either. 4 Puzzle at a time, just because it will recover anything. It works really well with this deck because there's so much like extra added consistency to make you draw into the double puzzles when you need them, such as teammates, 3 Shaman, the Zoroark line, and then Trainer's Mail. So it works really efficiently in this deck. It's really nice for recovering D-Valley, DCEs, parts of your Zoroark line, or just anything else that you might need. Yeah, I definitely like puzzles. I think that's pretty much a staple in the deck at this point. 2 Trainer's Mail. I like 3, but I went down to 2 just so I could fit in Ranger. I didn't really want to fit in Ranger. I just felt like it was a necessary thing, like something you just have to do even though you don't want to, just because if you face like Giratina or something like that, you're just going to get destroyed if you don't. But in hindsight, I kind of just wish I took the risk and like knew that I would lose if I played against Giratina or something like that. And Tauros is already enough to beat like Toad decks. I actually didn't use Ranger at all when I played against Toad anyway. So I definitely think I wish I went with 3 males and just no Ranger. Or just another tech of some sort, maybe like a red card or something. Special Charge is pretty necessary in this deck. You only play 4 energy, so it's really nice to have that way to recover them. Obviously, you can puzzle to get back energy, but it's really nice to not have to do that. Like, it's really cool to just play Special Charge and then not have to puzzle to get back DCs and be able to puzzle for other stuff instead. It just keeps the deck more consistent. So I definitely like Special Charge. 1 Choice Band. I really wanted 2, but just 1 was like sufficient. 2 just is nice because it means you don't have to discard as many Night Marches some of the time, because like you can do more damage just with less discarded, so that means Oricorio is not going to hurt you as bad. So I definitely would consider going up to 2 Choice Band if I could find room and if the meta works with it, because it really helps against Zoroark. You only need to have 9 Night Marches discarded to one-shot Zoroark with Joltik, as opposed to having, let's see, what would that, 11 Night Marchers discarded, so literally all of them except for 1. So Choice Band's like, it's super important against Zoroark decks. You need it, need it, need it. So I definitely could see going up to 2. 1 Floatstone, obviously you need like some sort of switching effect in pretty much every deck. Guzma does that, but Floatstone just gives you something to throw up in the active position, like every time something gets knocked out, and then you can just retreat it later or whatever. It makes it so Guzma works more effectively. Definitely would not consider cutting that. I like the idea of running 2, but I don't think I'd ever really do that. But I would consider it. Blower, that's like, I don't know, it's kind of another one of those cards that's like necessary, but like you don't really want to play it, you just kind of have to. When I played against Garbodor, I was very happy I had Field Blower in the deck. I played against Garbodor 3 times day 2, so yeah, I found Blower to be extremely helpful, especially with Dowsing Machine and the puzzles and stuff to recover it multiple times. I think 1-ofs are really strong in this deck because you have Dowsing and then Puzzle of Time to make it so you can use the 1-ofs like several times depending on the matchup, so techs end up being very, very powerful in this kind of a build. So yeah, I think Blower's worth it. It ends up being helpful like a little bit in a lot of matchups, and then when you face the one like Garbodor or whatever, it makes a really big difference. So yeah, I played Blower like 3 or 4 times in one game when I faced, I don't remember if it was Jimmy Pendarvis or Igor Costa, but one of them. Counter Catcher, this like took the Lysander slot. Basically the way I looked at it is like pretty much all expanded decks right now like are well, not all of them are cutting down to just having one Guzma and no Lysander, but a lot of them are doing that, and they're all just kind of comfortable with knowing that like they'll just knock out the active thing, and if they prize their one Gust of Wind effect, they'll just draw it off the prizes later and be able to use it then. So I kind of just went with the same idea. I was like, I don't really need Lysander. I think one Guzma is fine, but Counter Catcher is going to make a really big difference when I'm losing games, because it gives me a way to like hex and bring up something, or Gets and bring up something. It's almost like playing two supporters in one turn, and it's going to be helpful in the games I'm losing anyway. So like those are the cards that are really important, is the cards that are going to help when you're like losing a game, because it'll give you a chance to come back into it. So I think Counter Catcher was really nice, super powerful in Night March Mirror, because they're going to get ahead in the prize trade a lot of the time. And like the games that they don't get ahead in the prize trade, you're just going to win anyway. So it makes it so you win the games that you should win, and then you can win the games that you probably should lose some of the times as well. So I think it's probably the best Night March tech that you can put in a deck, or best Night March tech that you can put in a Night March deck. And I definitely used it a lot. I think it was very helpful several different times, but like only when I was losing games. So it ended up like seeming kind of less useful, because I went like 10-4-1, I believe. So like, you know, 10 rounds I was winning anyway, right? So I like didn't use it a whole lot of the time because of that, but I think when I did use it, it mattered a lot, so I like it. And then Dowsing Machines, just because I can recover puzzle a time with it to make it so I can puzzle like double puzzle like 6 times in a single game, which is crazy, because you play 2 puzzles at once and then get back a puzzle or a Dowsing Machine and then one other card, and then play Dowsing with puzzle, or play a puzzle with a puzzle, whatever, and then get back one, etc. So it makes it so you can recover a lot over and over and over again. And it's really nice when you only play one D-Valley. I found it very useful, and I would consider Comp Search. I played Comp Search for a long time, but I think Dowsing Machine's just like too strong to not play. It's less consistent than Comp Search for sure, but I figure with it being best of 3, and I play like 3 games out pretty much every single round, that it's worth it for that reason, even though like it's gonna not be as good some of the time. And then obviously play 4 double colorless. There's no Night March deck that doesn't play 4 double colorless, I don't think. But yeah, that's my list. Oh, and big shout out to Daniel Altavilla, because he worked with me a lot on this deck. Me and him, you know, tested this Night March list a lot and made it together. His idea was, well, yeah, like, anyway, that's it. Alright, so that's the list. Big shout out to everybody that helped me with it. Shout out to George for the sponsorship. Obviously, you know, shout out to Pro Play Games and Ultra Pro. Amazing sleeves, amazing company. And I think that's about it. Yeah.